International Podcast Day is September 30th, and you can help spread the word. You may be asking, what can I do to get involved? It's pretty simple. Head over to internationalpodcastday.com and check the suggestions. Then use hashtag International Podcast Day to join the conversation. You can reach out and connect with other podcast listeners, and your favorite podcast hosts. Remember September 30th, International Podcast Day, a day-long celebration of the power of podcasts.
Once again, Dave, it's International Podcast Day. Can you believe it's already been a year since we last did this?
Yes. Happy International Podcast Day, everybody. I got this cool new little water tumbler that my wife got me as a custom gift to celebrate the amazing day we have here going on. Steve, I cannot believe it. It's been 365 days since we broadcasted and brought the International Podcast Day live broadcast to everybody. So first and foremost, welcome, everybody. We do hope that you have a fantastic International Podcast Day. Find your own unique way of celebrating. And as always, we appreciate the community support.
You're absolutely right. And sorry about that echo there. I had the machine on behind me. But I did want to talk about one thing. And that is, during this time, we don't need this crap. We're virtual. We are having a virtual celebration of International Podcast Day. I did want to say one thing, Dave. And that is that 2020 around the globe has been extremely challenging, and numerous natural disasters and the COVID-19 pandemic has severely impacted many lives, which include human tragedy. As a voice of the world, each of us can aid those in desperate need with financial, through organization, or just reaching out a hand with our voices. As we prepare for International Podcast Day, please remember those and help wherever you can with your message. To me, that is podcasting. Podcasters helping people. So God bless to all those in need. So Dave, let's talk a little bit about what's going to go on here with International Podcast Day.
Yeah, we have a really exciting event ramped up for you guys, and from everybody around the world. I do want to thank every one of these 60 plus podcasters that we have featured this year. That is going to be from 26 countries from around the world. And Steve, real quickly, I wanted to list those countries just to demonstrate the true internationality of podcasts. We have the United States, Costa Rica, Malaysia, India, Kenya, Portugal, Serbia, Italy, Canada, Japan, the United Kingdom, France, Zambia, Turkey. We have Argentina, Colombia, New Zealand, and we have 5 different countries from the Caribbean. We have Jamaica, we have Haiti, Trinidad and Tobago, British Virgin Islands. So Steve, an amazing jam-packed 24 hours of live broadcasting featuring voices from all over the globe. We're really looking forward to it. Of course, you can find all of the schedule and all the speakers over at internationalpodcastday.com. It's going to be a fantastic event. Steve, I can't tell you enough. I can't thank the speakers enough for sharing their time, their energies, their efforts in making this day a reality. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you everybody out there in podcast land and to our speakers for making this day possible.
So Dave, over the next about 24 hours, there's a lot that we can do. For example, social media. Please use the hashtag International Podcast Day. Go over to our website, and there's all kinds of imagery and banners. Put them on your website. Change your social media image to be International Podcast Day. Because what is International Podcast Day? It is a celebration. It is a party about the craft that we really all love. We have thank you social media cards over there. If there's a podcaster that has really changed or impacted your life, send them a little thank you note. There is nothing wrong, and a podcaster really gets a kick out of that. I will mention that every year, Dave, on every social media platform, we trend number 1. It's really quite an amazing feat, and we're going to do it again this year, I am sure. So, Dave, if you wouldn't mind telling us about our sponsors for this year. Excuse me, Dave. You are muted.
How about that? Live podcasting and live broadcasting. I was muted that whole time. How about that? So anyways, let's get back to it. internationalpodcastday.com/sponsors. And I do want to thank, first of all, our platinum sponsor, Blueberry, who they do provide the most flexible tools in podcasting. Make sure you head over and check out that free 30-day trial that they're offering. One of the cool parts about what Blueberry is bringing this year is they're bringing 2 podcasts to us. One is going to be Powerful Women in Podcasting, featuring exactly that, 3 powerful women in podcasting that are changing the landscape. And for their 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time broadcast, they're going to be bringing Todd Cochran and Adam Curry. The Podfather himself is going to be joining International Podcast Day for the first time. We do want to thank Focusrite, who is an amazing supporter of the podcasting space. They're obviously pioneers in the professional audio recording space as well. And Podient, they are a podcast hosting and analytic corporation based out of the UK, but they are just like us, international. And so they're doing a really cool 3-minute podcast pitch project for independent podcasters. And so they're going to be yielding their time to a number of independent podcasters by sharing their really cool, fun, informative 3-minute videos. And they're going to be telling the world of a variety of independent podcasters from around the globe, which is really cool. And of course, want to thank our celebration supporters, podcastpage.io, The Waves of Tech, Resonate Recordings, and Hindenburg, always there to support us year in and year out. So Steve, that wraps up the sponsorships. We definitely encourage everybody to go over there, check out what they're doing. They're big supporters. And for the 3 sponsors there that will be broadcasting live, you can find more over at our schedule page over on internationalpodcastday.com.
Oh, thank you so much, Dave. It's actually the part of our program right now that we really love. It's one of the, I think, the top pinnacle things that what we do with International Podcast Day, besides evangelizing what we do, what podcasting is about. And that is the International Podcast Day Gratitude Award. And there's a reason it is in the opening of our show. It's because we find it of that value. And in past years, some of the award winners have done absolutely breathtaking, amazing feats in the podcasting space to do what? To impact a life. To me, that's one of the most important things about podcasting. And it doesn't have to be of a certain genre. It could be comedy. It could be educational. It could be scientific. It could be the outreach. It could be the inner exchange with their listeners. This year, the recipient is Dave Lee. And I'm sorry I'm choking because nobody knows how much work this guy puts into putting on International Podcast Day. Besides being my son, he's a true podcaster. He loves what he does. You have no idea the amount of work it takes to put on this event. Trying to corral dozens and dozens of podcasters across the world to work out a game plan, to develop social media strategies, to get me on the phone and work out a solution. And I say, Dave, I have to go to bed. And he says, 1 more minute, we can finish working this out.
There's still time.
Dave, take it over. I'm going to bring you your award.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Steve, so much. I mean, one reason I do this is because the podcast community has given me so much, right? I started podcasting March 1st, 2007. And since then, the community itself has been amazing. They continue to show up. They continue to support. And, oh, look at this. I get my little award right now. Yay! Perfect. This is going to go on my wall with none of the other awards I ever received. But yeah, it's been amazing, and I just want to thank everybody out there in the community because they have really driven this event. And as many of you know, International Podcast Day started in 2014 simply as National Podcast Day, and we did a few six-hour fragmented broadcasts, and not until the community came out and said, hey, let's make this international, let's do something bigger. And yes, I mean, I do my part, but again, it wouldn't be enough without the sponsors, without the support of Steve and his technical know-how and everything else that goes on behind the scenes, and the encouragement that the industry itself gives me and kind of pushes me forward. So I want to thank the industry, you know, specifically for all that. And I'm really excited just to bring International Podcast Day every day, every year to you. And each year we try and expand it. We try and make it bigger because the community deserves it. And the community is worth spending that much time and celebrating. So Steve, thank you for the award. I'm really looking forward to hanging it up in the studio back at home. But yeah, cheers to everybody, and thank you so much for making the event what it is. You guys give me the energy and you guys give me the passion each year to keep on keeping on.
You made me feel like a little baby. That's not cool. It is well deserved. If anybody knows Dave, he's a remarkable young man. And I really appreciating being a part of the Podcast Day platform, and more importantly, my son. And it's an award well deserved. I will tell you though, Dave, on the gratitude award section on the website, you're going to have to write your own bio. I'm not going to do it.
I can do that. I can paste.
So with that, Dave, I think we're going to get into our primary topic. So if you wouldn't mind introducing our guests, and we'll get this going.
Absolutely. Yeah, we are super excited this kickoff to invite Evan Gonzalez, one of the founders of Outlier HQ, and Ariel Niesenblatt, which is also a part of Outlier and works with Squadcast. Ever and Ariel, how are you both doing tonight?
Fantastic. Thank you for
Well, I'm not doing well anymore. How could you do the waterworks like that? Are you kidding me?
Waterworks on demand.
Oh my God. Is everybody else feeling sad and beautiful and happy? I mean, Ever, you have a son. I just thank you for saying all those nice things about Dave. It killed me.
Yeah, well, it's
the award, but you know, first of all, congratulations on all of this success, right? You guys have been doing this for a while. It keeps growing year after year after year.
Yeah.
You know, when Steve was saying that you're trying to kind of get everybody together on the same page, you know, we think we have it hard with our regional show or national show. Here you guys are doing international in all the different time zones. And I can't even imagine what that must have been like. But year after year, you show up and you put on a great show. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you guys. And one of the reasons we want to invite both of you on to sort of just dissect to some degree the landscape of the podcasting community right now, because you both have a very interesting perspective, I think, being founders of Outlier, that you do travel a national podcast traveling thing, and you've done them virtual now just because of what everything's going on. And I think you guys are really well positioned within the space. And I think your voices and your message and what's going on in those different areas, whether it's Austin, Salt Lake City, the Northeast, LA, which Steve and I were able to attend last September, which was amazing down there in basically downtown LA. So I just want to kind of kick off, let you guys explain kind of what you do with Outlier, and then we can kind of talk about some of the specifics about what's going on in the industry, maybe what's unique that you're seeing in the space that other people perhaps aren't seeing.
Yeah, sure. Let me go back to the
absolutely.
very beginning and then kind of catch everybody up. And then I love telling the story about how Ariel and I met.
I was just going to suggest it. I was just
I'll
going to
do
suggest
that.
that. So do it and kick it off.
In 2013, I sold my background's in freight management, logistics, and I sold my company in 2014 or so. Sitting around trying to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I decided to start a podcast, right? Because I like business and I like people. So I started a podcast where I talk to entrepreneurs from all over the world, and 435 plus episodes later, somewhere in there, I was like, you know what, this is actually taking off. There's some people kind of behind this. I'm building a little bit of community. Let's do more. So we started a co-working space in Southern Utah. We started an event series for entrepreneurs called Founders Weekend. And then after that, I was like, I started getting more and more into podcasting, not just with my show, but interacting with people like you, Dave, and you, Steve, and definitely Ariel. And I was like, there's, you know, our backgrounds in events. Let's kind of do more of what I love. And so kind of over a weekend, I was like, you know what, let's go and do a podcast festival, see what that's all about. And so we had one in Southern Utah, my hometown where I was living. I'm living in Austin now, but I was in St. George, Utah. And so I invited a few podcasters to kind of come and do a small little event. I think we had maybe 100 people there total, but it was fun. It was great. A full day of cool stuff. And we put up the website. I invited a few people to come and speak. Obviously, we're selling tickets. And then out of the blue, I get this email from this person that I've never met before. I didn't know anything about. Like, hey, I saw your podcast festival. It looks cool, but you don't have enough women on there. The end, right? See you later. And then I was like, wait, what? Yeah. And so I obviously I Googled her. I looked her up.
Drop the mic.
Doing in the industry. Yeah. And I was like, this is somebody that I need to have on my stage. And so I emailed her back. We hopped on a call and she came out and she spoke and did a panel and kind of helped from there. So from there, our very first kind of throwaway events, just wanted to test the waters. We're like, we have something special here. And so after St. George, we brought Ariel on board and then we went to LA, and now we've been to LA a couple times, Denver, Austin, Salt Lake City. We were supposed to be in North Adams this past week or so, Columbus, Ohio, but obviously COVID kind of put a wet towel over that. But yeah, that's how Ariel and I met. I've kind of looked to her to help with direction of the events, topic, the feel, right? She kind of has her fingers, her hand on the pulse of podcasting. And so she's a great asset to everything that we're doing. And we're having fun along the way, meeting a lot of great podcasters in different communities. And so we're not going to stop. We were just talking about 2021, what it's going to look like.
Yeah. Well said. Nothing to add except glad that you didn't just delete the email when I sent it to you. And yeah, Dave and Steve. Yeah. Thank you for having us and letting us share our story.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need different voices to kind of put us in place, right? I realized with International Podcast Day, when I scheduled in 2016, I looked at my schedule and I was like, #podcasting so white. And I was like, what am I doing? Like what we are presenting here at any conference has to be wholly representative of the podcasting industry and the voices that are in podcasts. And I can appreciate anybody that calls out in a respectful way to say, hey, you need to be better at it. And I think that's one thing that I've done to at least demonstrate with International Podcast Day. And I know Ever and Ariel, you guys are doing the same with what you're doing with Outlier. So let's kind of talk about your community a little bit, how that's grown from just this like, hey, let's just start it and see what happens, to where you've gone today. And I'll just kind of freeform it from there. But yeah, I'm really intrigued with your community and kind of want to get some insights on how that's been going.
I think what we found pretty early on is that when you're building any sort of community that's frontward facing, that people are going to interact with, whether that's online or in person, you need to be really intentional with who you ask to have leadership positions. So about a year ago, I want to say, is when we started talking about our advisory board. And we wanted to make sure that our advisory board actually represented the people who attend our events. So we reached out to people who attend our events. We wanted to have people on our advisory board who had experienced the Outlier magic. And so our advisory board is a group of really amazing men, women, people of all sorts of racial and ethnic backgrounds and all sorts of podcast backgrounds as well. We've got, people who are podcasters, people who are not podcasters but work in the industry, people who have chat shows, people who have, like narrative kind of discussion shows. So we really wanted to make sure that reflected the larger podcast world. Ever, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no. And honestly, from the very beginning, we are doing this not just because, it's a moneymaker. It's more labor of love for us because it's something that I enjoy doing. I'm assuming that Dave and Steve, you guys feel the same way. I love interacting with everybody that comes to the show. I love interacting with our speakers, our sponsors. It's just a great community to kind of hang out, and I get a lot of energy from them, a lot of and drive from them. And so it's been, again, it's a little bit of a business move, but it's much more than that in our opinion. It's a true community. And so we take this community sense that we're trying to build with Outlier, and we truly go into these different cities and find the podcasting communities in those different cities. And we have a lot of fun, and we discover we're trying to stay true to our brand, Outlier, right? We're looking for outlier podcasters, and we're finding them, right? They're in their basements, they're in their closets, but they're out there and they're doing some amazing work. And we've been able to find a few of those and use our platform to kind of shine a light on them.
Yeah, and I think something that's interesting about moving from a different city each time is that we don't get to build up any sort of like, oh, Outliers coming back here in a year, but we do get to really kind of do a deep dive into whatever town we've decided to go to that time around. So, for example, when we were in Salt Lake City just this past January, like before everything shut down, we started doing our pitch competition. I would say the one before that, but for this one, we had amazing pitches. So people who want to present their podcast present for 2 minutes and then 3 minutes of questions. And the winner of our pitch competition was this guy named Marcos. And he had this amazing pitch that you would have never thought would have come out of St. George, Utah. And it's about how he's a barber. And so he even included, he had one of those like barber cape things that he shook at the end of it. It was just beautiful. And it's just, it just shows you how niche you can get if you niche down, really, if you don't just rely on the bigger podcasters who are great, but there are so many people who are doing amazing things in the podcast world that are on a smaller level.
No matter, I think, if we're talking podcasting or small businesses within the world, it's the independent that really drives everything, whether it's economy, whether it's a passion, whether it's a hobby, or whether it's something like what you're doing. It's the individuals, when stacked up together, really can overcome the industries. And I say that because most of us are independents, and we're seeing a lot of the big boys come into our space. Some of it's good. I think some of it is bad. But I think what you're doing alludes to a voice that can be heard on a larger scale that I think is so very important. And the second point I'd like to make too is that as you go from city to city, I think you find things like what we do with what we're doing. When we go to different countries, people listen to these streams and they go, that's very interesting, because people in different countries have different issues related to podcasting than perhaps where you live. It could be a cultural thing. It could be a dialect. It could be a language. It could be laws within that country. It could be bandwidth. It could be many things that we find. Every country is different that we discuss on International Podcast Day. And I think from a regional perspective, you can probably find the same type of things with your Outlier.
We definitely have. Yeah. I mean, Denver was completely different than LA, right? And different than Austin. And it's that regional kind of flavor that we get. And
well, you're not talking about heat, right?
That's right.
LA was.
It's that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We call it, for those that wanted on the joke, the air conditioning wasn't working. We were downtown LA, September. It was still hot. We call it the hottest podcasting festival of that year. Literally the hottest.
I'll say, we have fun inside jokes at Outlier Podcast Festival. In addition to the hottest podcast festival ever, our first fully online festival, which was this past May, it was early on in the pandemic, so not everybody had their shit figured out. Are we allowed to curse? But what sort of, not everybody had their stuff figured out. And what happened was that our Zoom had everybody listed as Joe Test. And so then we just kept saying we are all Joe Test. So we've got a lot of
chatting. Yeah, was Joe Test, yeah. and some of the speakers were like, "Oh, we have a lot of Joe Test is asking a lot of questions," but everybody
very common name, yeah. So we just had all these fun things happen during our festivals that might not happen in bigger festivals, but I think it gives it character
for sure. And Steve, to kind of get back to the just the different locations. It truly is. There is a difference, right? We do see a lot more industry podcasters in LA than we do in Denver or Austin or places like that. But one of the things that we do well, right? There's we still need to learn a lot of event management and things like that. I'm sure we can get a whole lot better. But one of the things that we kind of take pride in is that we're able to have the indie podcasters, like you mentioned, and then some of the industry leaders, and mix them in for a great schedule, right? So we have the big boys that we're talking about doing their thing. But one of the things that we like to do is a lot of our keynote speakers, if you've seen some of our events in the past, they're not big, huge names, but they do pack a punch, right? They are truly, truly talented. And we kind of take pride in kind of picking those people out in each different city, and having the blend of industry leaders and indie podcasters and sponsors and everybody else, plus attendees. It just kind of, it gives it a vibe like nothing I've ever seen before.
Yeah, you bring up some good points, Ever, because I think of podcasters in general, and you think of, you have to have 100 episodes in, you have to have 200 episodes in to really be on the map, or be, I guess, of a value for like a headline or a keynote, right? And it's not the case. I mean, I have met incredible podcasters from around the world who have 20 episodes, and they just have a ridiculous amount of knowledge about their industry, whatever they're an expert in, whether that's marketing or distribution or community or workflow, whatever it is. It's like, you don't have to be celebrity status, and you don't have to have, you don't have to be a 13-year podcast veteran like me to be able to get on stage. And like, if you can command an audience, if you can have amazing material that you can share that's one actionable that people are really going to relate to, I think it's incredible, because I've sat through, I remember Josh Hallmark was one of those that did it. And then it was followed up by Todd Cochran, who later, obviously a veteran in the space, both very powerful with their message, two very complete, stark representations of the industry, but also, you don't take yourself for granted as a podcaster. If you don't have 100 episodes, still get in there, have your voice be heard, reach out to these different organizers and say, hey, I want to be a part of it. And you're exactly right. You don't need to be a seasoned veteran to make sure that your voice has value. I mean, you can pack a punch, like you said, like no other. And it's been pretty incredible to hear so many voices that are out there, and just the breadth of knowledge that we get from the podcasting space is just incredible. And year in, year out, as we plan our event, just like you both are planning yours, you just learn something new every time, and you learn, what works, what doesn't work, but you also learn some of those big names that you want to have back in the future. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's pretty incredible to kind of think of the talent that's out there behind the mic at this point.
Yeah, we think it's a good mix, right? What we bring to the table. But and one of the things that you mentioned, right? Those that have 20 episodes, 50 episodes, that consider themselves newbies, reach out to people like us and other event organizers and pitch us on what you want to do, right? You don't have to wait till you have 1 million downloads. You don't have to wait until you have 500 episodes, right? If you have something interesting to say, you're just making our life, our jobs easier by pitching us. And we don't have to go hunting now. Now we're just kind of all this stuff is coming into us. But yeah, if you think you have something interesting to say, maybe something even controversial or goes against everything that you're learning from the gurus right out there, pitch it. And then maybe you'll be on somebody else's stage. That's what we'd love to see, right? We don't agree with everything that comes from our stage. Yeah, go ahead, Ariel. Huh?
Yeah, we also don't even like the word keynote very much, because like we said, with the term outlier, we just try to go outside the box. Ever is very forgiving when I suggest things that are ridiculous sounding. He says, let's try it out. And same thing with when we even try to redefine the term keynote, because what's a keynote? It's a very typical conference type schedule situation. Like, you imagine like a hotel that has a bunch of different rooms and breakout sessions, and it's very corporate, right? And so we definitely try to go against the grain there. And I think that goes with the territory of looking for people who are not your typical keynotes. It doesn't have to be a clear 50-minute speech, clear beginning, middle, and end with a few moments where the crowd claps. It doesn't have to be like that. It can be much weirder and much more of an outlier situation.
Yeah, we've been lucky enough
to have that extends to everything in podcasting.
Yeah, we've been pretty lucky. Every single time we kind of put a lineup together, we have such great talent, such great content coming from the stage, whether it's virtual or physical, that, like Ariel mentioned, we like to take a big swing, right? We swing for the fences.
Yeah, we miss sometimes.
Yeah, because if it misses, it's okay. The rest of the program carries the event, and so every single time there are one, maybe two that I'm like, that one didn't quite work, but so what? Let's keep going, right? I mean, even this last one last week, and it's okay for us. And one of the things Ariel mentioned about the corporate structure, all that good stuff, that's great, and it works for a lot of companies. For us, you've been to one of our events. It was at a loft, right? Almost abandoned place. Our stage looked a little bit like a living room, right? So we built a place like that. We've done it at co-working spaces. In Denver, we were in an old dance studio, which is
Pod.
It was cool.
Right.
House of Pod. And so, yeah, we want to stay away from the hotels and the convention centers. We want to make it a little bit more of an intimate setting so that our speakers and attendees and sponsors can walk away having that feeling of true community, instead of there being a barrier between our speakers and our attendees. It's you and me. It's everybody. Let's go. And we hear a lot about the hallway conversations. That those are the most meaningful, right? That's where you make connections. That's where you talk about yourself and the projects that you're working on. And so again, we have great lineups, but it's the hallway conversations that I think people enjoy the most, and we try to facilitate that as much as we can.
Yeah.
And we're trying to
and we also, we try to make out also our keynote speakers, whatever you want to call them. We try to ask them to be accessible beyond just their keynote speech. So we had Martine Powers from the Washington Post. That's a big deal. Yeah. She was a keynote speaker in Salt Lake City. She stuck around. She chatted with everybody. She connected with people on LinkedIn afterwards. That was great. That's what we want. We want, the people from all over the industry coming together, because like I was kind of alluding to before, the podcast industry does not have set rules like network television, network radio has. You don't have to hit FCC guidelines in order for your podcast to be on the air. Of course, individual companies will require certain things, but when you're... Did I cut out?
Just for a sec.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter when you're independent.
True.
That's true. And I got to say that the Outlier in LA probably had the most incredible MC I've ever seen in my life. She was just hysterical.
Oh boy.
She was fantastic.
And I'll just say the MCs here are the best father-son duo in podcasting. Yeah. I said it behind the scenes, and I have to say it again.
Say it now. It's on record, guys. It's on record. It's going to be YouTube forever. Yeah.
But I can't think of another father-son duo except for maybe Pat Flynn and his 10-year-old kid at Podcast Movement 5 years ago.
You can't beat that cuteness. We can't manage that.
No, you're cuter.
Hey, before we go on, I want to make sure that this gets passed along. Our Gratitude Award winner last year, Podcast World Tour, is in the chat, and they would like to talk to you guys about some future things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it. Absolutely.
So, I didn't know if you saw that.
Nick?
But,
Nick, say hi in the chat if that's you.
Yeah,
anyway,
it'll be podcast.
I've been in touch with them before.
Yeah. So very good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, just briefly, I know it's always on everybody's mind, the incredible year 2020 has been so far. Pandemic, because of COVID, financial implications, everybody having to quickly move online. How do you feel that has impacted not just Outlier, but how, as communities and podcasters, we've had to kind of deal with this? I know Dave and I on our own tech show, we bring up COVID, and because it has an impact to how we're feeling, what we're doing, what it's doing with our lives and our utility with technology. And I think there's a lot of confusion and a lot of heartache this year, but have you guys been dealing with those kinds of issues?
Yeah, I'll talk about how it's impacted Outlier a little bit, and then kind of let Ariel talk about just in general the podcasting scene.
Totally.
With us, we'd been doing the podcast festival for a couple of years now, right, leading into 2020. So we were feeling really, really good about 2021, thinking I think we actually figured it out. I think we're doing okay. We had 3 set, right? Salt Lake City in January, Columbus, Ohio in May, and then North Adams, Massachusetts in September. So we're looking forward to that. Obviously got Salt Lake City off the ground in January, but then obviously COVID hit. And so we were sitting here thinking, do we cancel? Do we do it? I don't know. Let's figure this out. and then with that, and then the riots and the protesting, and then it was just like a heavy few months, and it's still kind of heavy, right? And it didn't feel quite right. I remember we were going to have a webinar on Joe Rogan moving to Spotify and talking about that nonsense, but then it was right close to the George Floyd incident, and so we pivoted, and then we had a great panel talking about podcasting and how we can use our platforms for good in the world, right? And it was a great discussion. We still have it in our YouTube channel and our Facebook group, and it was great. And so we've kind of slowly shifted into talking a little bit about more serious things. I mean, we like to have fun, but it just kind of seemed a little bit too lighthearted to continue the way we're going. We switched to virtual events, like we mentioned before, but even then I was like, and especially the podcasters, a lot of freelancers, a lot of our community, they're struggling with their jobs. Some of them don't have jobs anymore, all those things. And so we switched over from our normal ticket price to pay whatever you can, right? As low as $5. It doesn't matter. And we had a lot of people sign up $5, $10, with $5 increments. And we were totally fine. It was virtual event. We really didn't have any cost associated with it.
We're not paying for space. Yeah.
Right.
Or food.
So we did it in May and we did it in September. And the way things are looking, we're probably going to do it again January and May of 2021, virtual events, unless something really happens. But yeah, we're kind of shifting our focus a little bit and talking more about podcasters and diversity and just the world as it is now. And again, we like to have fun, but I think we're trying to look out for our community definitely and putting these resources in front of them.
Yeah. And I can speak to community in general. I love the word community. I love what it entails. When I was in Los Angeles, I lived there for 4 years. I just moved recently to Portland, Maine. Shout out to anybody in Portland or in Maine. Would love to chat. When I was in Los Angeles, I was I think I cut out just a second. Here I am. I was very involved in the larger podcast community, and a lot of times that meant being in person. There were so many podcast meetups, so many happy hours, so many discussions, so many workshops. It was amazing. And whether they were individually organized, independently organized, or with KCRW, with KPCC, with other podcast networks, they were amazing and really great growth opportunities. I also put on a few myself. Some of them were outlier sanctioned. Some of them were happy hours that I just really wanted to get people together to talk. Some of them were storytelling shows, all kind of relating back to podcasting. Obviously, that can't happen anymore, and that is very upsetting. I remember back in March, I had a whole calendar of things that I wanted to do. And when's the last time you had a whole calendar of like events that you were looking forward to actually in person? It's literally March, and that is nuts. And I just remember everything slowly but surely being canceled, and the word cancel being such a strong word in March, and having to shift and really questioning what that would mean. And I think it has gradually become something that we've all contended with over the months. And what that looks like for me right now is more online events, although I think people are tired of online events to a certain extent. I was doing a lot. Dave, you know this. I was doing a lot of trivia. You and your wife participated in Friends trivia somewhere back in, I don't even know when. And
yeah, that was a while ago. It was fun.
I just tried to do a ton of online events, and they were great, but eventually people tired of that. So what we're doing now, I recently started working for Squadcast. Shout out to Squadcast. Let us know in the comments if you're a Squadcaster. I'm the community manager there, which is a new position. And I think part of the reason that Squadcast, Rock, and Zach were interested in having a community manager is because what is community? There are so many people in this greater podcasting world that are doing things that are, in and of themselves, they're independent. They're podcasts that are being put out by me to my fans. You're putting out a podcast ever to your fans. Those people might not cross over, but what if they could? What if we could capitalize on the feelings that are being expressed in those podcasts and chat with each other? And more so for podcasters, how can we bring people together to help with guest swaps, to help with general sound issues, all that kind of stuff. So with what we're doing with Squadcast is we now have a private Squadcast Facebook group where we're doing all sorts of chatting and opportunities for people to collaborate with each other. I love also the word collaborate. And we're also going to be doing office hours where people can chat with Squadcast. And like, I think it's a great opportunity just to be able to have some FaceTime, even if it is online. And until we're back, that's what it'll be.
Yeah, I think when you look at the podcast space during the pandemic, it shines a light on just how incredibly talented, how flexible, and how adaptable the industry has become, right? It's incredible. You can move events online. Podcasters have learned that, hey, I can stream to Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, all these different places. I can engage in my audience in a lot of different ways. So yes, where you were having in-person meetups with like pub crawls and live broadcasts and trivia nights and all these different things, you've just learned how to reach your audience in a different perspective. And I think that's really great. And we had a comment from Carla DeMarco in the chat room that says, at the start of the lockdown here in Canada, I joked a couple of times on my podcast about having a captive audience, quote unquote. And she said, but in all seriousness, it was a bit easier to secure her guests, interview faculty members, researchers at her university, because everybody was housebound, though a lot of them were also juggling childcare and work and moving fully online. But at the same time, I think we have learned how to adapt and create the best material we can out of the situation that exists, the situation that presents itself. And so again, if it's 100 degrees in LA downtown in a loft, we're still going to make it happen, right? And it doesn't matter if we have moved away from in-person events to virtual meetups. We're going to find a way, and we're adaptable, we're perseverance, and we just have that in our nature, because as you had mentioned earlier, there are no rules. We figure things out as we go. We can lay the groundwork. We can build a new road. And I think that's exactly, since, at least in the United States in March, that has happened. And I think that's ultimately really shines a really beautiful light on the podcaster and the podcast industry as a whole. Just saying, we're not bound by these limitations and these artificial constructs that are out there. We have the ability to adapt and pull in resources, and the community can get behind us. And so I appreciate both of your comments, because it is so valuable to hear that, because as we know, a lot of us get in our own bubble, we're doing our thing, we're working within our communities, but to hear it coming from every different angle and every different region and country, I think it's pretty powerful just to highlight and show some appreciation for everybody that has been so flexible and adaptable throughout the last 9 months.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, and I also
go ahead.
I was going to say, I just want to also shout out the people who have been consuming content, who gave the creators kind of a break. I mean, a lot of people's audio might have taken a few weeks to adjust. A lot of creators also might have not put out content for a few weeks because they hadn't had their situation settled yet. And podcast listeners and community members have really risen to the challenge. And I just remember back in March feeling like everything was so unsure. I remember feeling nervous, and we've adapted with those times, and it's strange how quickly things become normal. But with that, podcasts have stayed stable, and that's cool.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Obviously, the pandemic, horrible thing, but there's some good things that have come out of it, right? And I think one of them is, even though we don't see each other, we don't touch each other anymore, it's still a sense of community, and I think it's tighter. And if you've noticed, we're more forgiving of each other too. Like Ariel said, with quality of the audio, right? Because a lot of these people that are used to doing it in their studios are now in their kitchen or in their bedroom. As long as the content is great, we're forgiving. But just like with our event this past weekend, the LA Podcast Festival virtual event, everybody was doing a live session that came on. We had one session that was pre-recorded that, we push play and we let it play for half an hour, 45 minutes or whatever. And it stopped working. It froze 5 minutes in. And so I'm sitting there thinking, shoot, what am I going to do for the next half an hour? And so luckily I saw Dave in the chat room, and I saw a couple other buddies, a couple other people that I know are professionals. And so, we got rid of the video, and we're like, okay, for the next 25, 35 minutes, we're just going to riff and pick the brains of these podcasters. And it actually turned out a lot of fun, right? Dave, you hopped on and we talked about International Podcast Festival Day and the things that you guys are working on. And I think people enjoyed it. It turned into something that could have been really embarrassing and really bad into something cool, because obviously we're professionals. And again, even if it didn't quite work, those that were there in attendance in the chat would have been a little bit more forgiving of it.
Yeah, I think to your point right there, I wanted to bring up, kind of dovetail off of that, is to say the only reason Ever invited me in is because I've been supporting Ever and showing up to his events and sharing the links and including in our newsletter. Like, the thing that I find most valuable in the podcast space, and this goes from the moment we started podcasting to now and forever, is you have to invest in people in order for them to invest in
huge.
you, right? Yeah, you have to buy their books. You have to attend their conferences, whether it's in person or virtual. You need to,
and you want to. You don't just
exactly.
do it because you have to, you know?
Right, because you want to. Absolutely. There's a value in there. And I'm grateful of the relationship I've built with everybody within the space. And it's important to understand that that's where you have to start. And opportunities like these pay-as-you-can conferences is a great opportunity to get in that chat, connect, reach out with organizers, meet other podcasters, other industry leaders, whoever it may be. And so, yeah, investing in that relationship first and foremost is going to get you so much farther, is going to help. As you mentioned, we've been forgiving, but guess what? If you're having audio problems, if you're having a video distribution problem, if you're having problems growing your audience, boom, you know somebody you can reach out to as a resource, and it's going to help. There's going to be no strings attached. We're going to provide our expertise and our knowledge. But yeah, I appreciate that time just sort of riffing through, because at the time I didn't know what happened, because I chimed in. I'm like, oh, 5 minutes in, he's talking by himself, you know? And so I was like, oh, Scott hopped on, and I was like, cool, let's roll with it. But yeah, that doesn't happen unless Ever and I have a common interest and a healthy respect for each other and a good relationship to back that up. So yeah, again, encourage everybody to stick with that relationship and build that relationship with people that you love, that you value, and their voices are powerful.
Yeah,
and it's got to be it.
Yeah. Yep.
Go ahead, Ever.
I spent time in logistics, sales, and entrepreneurship and startups, right, for the last 15, 20 years. And there's a lot of great communities in those groups and those industries, but the podcasting community is second to none when it comes to reaching out and offering their help, right? When we were first trying to figure out the virtual event section of what we're doing, I had questions. I didn't know exactly how everything worked. Scott Carson was a good buddy who's, I know, speaking or is doing something tomorrow as well to kind of celebrate the day. He hopped on, on the phone on a Saturday, and he was like, you need to do this and this and this and this. And he spent time showing me and walking me through it. I caught myself last week talking to somebody about how to do their own little online event as well. We kind of pay it forward, and it doesn't really matter. We want to be able to continue to help each other. And it's not forced. It doesn't feel fake. It doesn't feel anything. I think people really, truly want to help each other.
So as we start to wrap up this first hour of International Podcast Day, a couple quick items I want to finish up with. Number one, Dave, I don't know where you got those good genes. It wasn't from your father. It must have been your mother. So I appreciate that.
No problem. I do love my mother. She's passed along some good
duo.
Yeah,
the best duo.
I also want to point out that if you go over the website, I don't have time to go through them now. There's an area called meetups and things, and these are separate events for ours that are people celebrating Podcast Day in incredible ways, to include education or celebrations, many other things. Really appreciate if you go check it out. We know that the COVID year has really impacted what people are doing, that they have done in the past, but there's still importance. One of the things I want everybody to keep in mind is International Podcast Day is a celebration of the craft and the art that we love. And it doesn't matter if you're a podcaster, a listener, or don't even know what the term is. There's a place for you in the podcasting world, and that's why we are doing this. And lastly, Dave, if you wouldn't mind, once again, this year we have some recorded sessions and we have some live sessions. If you briefly break that out for us, and then we'll be on our way.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll make sure I unmute myself this time, unlike last time. So yeah, one of the cool little things that we actually did to supplement our 24-hour live broadcast this year was to reach out to, again, international podcasters and say, hey, why don't you contribute 20 to 25 minutes of a video? And so if you head over to internationalpodcastday.com/schedule, one, you'll see our entire schedule, but also you will see available recorded content right there already for you. We have individuals from Finland, Canada, the Dominican Republic. We have the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and we also have a Africa Podcasters 2020 highlight video out of Egypt and Kenya. And so I definitely encourage everybody to go over there, check that material out. Again, it's a great contribution, not only from the live broadcast, but from the recorded podcast or recorded broadcast perspective. Great material over there. We have one over there in Spanish, some over there in English as well. So definitely encourage everybody to go out there. Thank you to each and every one of our speakers, 60 podcasters, as I mentioned, from 26 different countries. Another amazing day. Thanks to everybody that has volunteered their time, their energies, and I look forward to celebrating. And thank you all for joining right along and celebrating right with us. So I am pretty sure I'll be having this smile on my face the entire the next 36 hours. And ever you had mentioned, the podcasting energy is real. It is a real thing, and it keeps you going. I don't drink caffeine, so I run on podcast energy. So I'll be having my herbal teas and my decaf coffees. But the energy of the community is what keeps this thing going. So yeah, thank you everybody for the continual and continual support year after year.
Dave, Steve, as a testament to what you guys are doing and what you guys are building, I'm speaking at three different podcasters tomorrow are celebrating by doing 5-hour streams, 10-hour streams. And so I'm speaking at three different ones, and those guys don't know each other. And so there are so many people that are celebrating in this way. So, and obviously that's a testament to what you guys have been able to build in this community, international community that you've been able to build. And so congratulations on all your success.
Well, thank you so much. And it's been a work of love, as we have talked about, and I think that's kind of the theme. And International Podcast Day has really taken on a life of its own. All of our sponsorships were full before we even advertised. People came to us. Twitter was already blowing up a week before because they already know what's coming. So it's really fun to watch. It's got to a point where we sit back and just smile. And that is one of the intents. I think no matter what you do in life, what you do in business, is to get to that point where you say, we hit the sweet spot. Let's go.
Yeah.
It's a holy, holy day for us podcasters.
We need a national or international holiday. Is there even a single international holiday? Maybe this can become the first one.
Right.
This is it.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. Why not? Exactly. Yeah. Thank you everybody for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Yep.
No more workload. We've had enough. So on behalf of Dave, Ariel, Ever, and myself, Steve, happy International Podcast Day. May your events, may your podcast, may your wishes, and may COVID go away from our lives. Let's get rid of it.
Happy International Podcast Day to you too.
Yep. Thank you. Happy International
Thank
Podcast
you for
Day,
having us.
everybody. Yep.
You bet. So we have our next session coming up in just a few minutes. You're going to hear this often, but if the next stream doesn't come up, immediately refresh your browser and we will be there. So we'll be back in just a few minutes with our next topic. Thanks.